They acquired the majority stake this morning. We're finished.
On a Friday morning in November, with the city spread out behind the floor-to-ceiling windows, Tunde walked out of the elevator at 11:15 and stopped walking. He had been in this building dozens of times. He had hosted fundraisers 2 blocks from here. He had shaken hands in lobbies exactly like this one. He knew how to read a room. This room was reading him. At the head of the conference table, in a charcoal suit, a single document in front of her, and the expression of a woman who had been expecting this meeting since before it was scheduled, was his wife. His estranged wife. The woman he had handed divorce papers to 4 weeks ago. The woman he had put out of their home with 3 suitcases on the day she buried her father. The woman his mother had spent 6 years calling, with barely concealed pleasure, the janitor's daughter. Behind her stood her attorney. And beside her attorney, seated with a leather portfolio and the calm of a man who had been waiting 19 years for this particular morning, was the chairman of the private wealth division of First Atlantic Bank. Tunde's campaign manager, Priscilla, leaned close to his ear. Tunde. Malek Holdings. Malek is her maiden name. The document on the table in front of Zara was a portfolio summary. 47 commercial properties. 3 within 2 miles of his family estate. His campaign headquarters. His fundraising venue. His 2 largest donors' primary tenancies. All of it. Every single piece of the ground he had been standing on. Zara looked up at him. Her face was perfectly still. "Please sit down, Tunde," she said. "We have a few items to go through." And the man who had handed his grieving wife an eviction notice while she was still wearing mourning clothes sat down, slowly, without knowing how his legs were doing it, and began to understand exactly what he had thrown away. "But before I tell you how we got to this room, and I promise you, every step of this story was earned, you need to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to the day Zara Malek arrived in Atlanta with 1 suitcase, a heart full of quiet, and a secret that could buy the building her husband thought he owned. Hello, and welcome to her drama tales. If you believe that the way a man treats his wife on her worst day is the truest thing he will ever show her, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of the drama. Because what Tunde did to Zara on the day she buried her father was not just cruelty. It was a miscalculation. The most expensive miscalculation of his life. And the man he spent 6 years dismissing as the janitor was about to become the most important name in every room Tunde ever tried to walk into. This is Zara's story. And the payback? The payback was built into the ground before Tunde ever arrived. Zara Malek was 32 years old when she married Tunde. She had grown up in a quiet suburb of Atlanta, the only child of Walter Malek, a man Tunde's family called, with the particular contempt of people who need to believe they are better than someone, the janitor. Always with that small pause before the last word. That pause was doing a lot of work. Walter Malek had spent 30 years as the head of building operations for Malek Properties, a commercial real estate firm he had founded in 1989 with $400, a plot of land outside the city, and a handshake deal with a surveyor who owed him a favor. By 1998, Malek Properties owned 14 commercial properties in metro Atlanta. By 2007, the portfolio had expanded into mixed-use developments in Buckhead and Midtown. By the time Walter's health began to fail, the firm held 47 properties across Georgia and 2 investment partnerships with a development group in Charlotte. Walter Malek did not dress like a wealthy man. He wore the same work boots for 12 years. He drove a 2001 Ford F-150 he refused to replace because, as he told anyone who asked, "It still starts and it gets me there." He carried his own bags. He ate at diners. He knew every one of his employees by first name and the names of their children. He was, to anyone looking from the outside, a quiet man who worked with his hands. What the people looking from the outside did not know was that this quiet man in his worn boots owned the land underneath the building where Tunde held his political fundraisers. He owned the parking structure where Tunde's donors gathered. He owned 3 commercial blocks within 2 miles of the Osei family estate. And 6 months before he died, when he knew the diagnosis was not going to reverse itself, Walter Malek called his attorney and made very specific arrangements. Everything to Zara. Every deed. Every share. Every certificate. Every building. He had wanted to tell her himself. He had been waiting for the right moment. He ran out of time. On the morning Zara left for her father's funeral, she stopped at a gas station on the way to the church. An elderly man was standing outside with a flat tire in the cold, trying to reach someone on a phone with a dead battery. Zara pulled over. She waited with him for 40 minutes while the roadside service came. She did not leave until she was sure he was safe. She was 40 minutes late to her own father's funeral. She did not tell anyone why. That was Zara. That was always Zara. Tunde had met Zara at a charity gala when she was 28. He was the kind of man who walked into a room and rearranged it, tall, politically connected, the son of an Atlanta family that had opinions about everything and money for most of it. He was running for a city council seat. He gave passionate speeches. He remembered names. He had a handshake that made you feel important. Zara's cousin had dragged her to the gala. She had not planned to stay. But Tunde had sat down next to her, asked what she thought about the city's infrastructure plan, and actually listened to her answer. Not the distant patience of a man waiting for his turn to speak. Real attention. Leaning forward. Following up. She stayed until the end of the evening. They were engaged 14 months later. Her father had said very little when she told him. He had looked at Tunde for a long time in that quiet, measuring way he had and said, "Make sure he sees you, Zara. Not the family. Not the background. You." She thought he was being protective. Fathers were like that. She did not understand what he was really warning her about. The first 2 years of the marriage were good, or close enough to good that Zara told herself they were. Tunde was busy. Always busy. Ambitious. She respected ambition. There were dinners and events and the kind of life that photographed well. The comments started in year 3. Small at first. Innocent in their framing. Precise in their aim. His mother, Beverly, at a family gathering, turning to Zara with a smile so practiced it had almost become genuine. "Tell me again, what is it your father does exactly? Building maintenance, is it? How lovely. Someone has to keep these things running." Tunde, coming home from a donor dinner, loosening his tie, almost casual. "The Hendersons were asking about your family background tonight. I told them your father was in property. I didn't go into detail." Zara understood what that meant. The janitor's daughter. That was the story Tunde's world had written for her. And slowly, year by year, Tunde began to believe it too. Or perhaps he had always believed it. Perhaps the listening at the gala, the real attention, the follow-up questions, perhaps all of that had been the performance. Perhaps this was the truth. He stopped correcting his mother. He started agreeing with her silences. He began treating his wife the way a man treats something he has decided is beneath him, but has not yet found the right moment to discard. He was waiting for the right moment. Her father's death handed it to him. 6 years is a long time to be invisible in your own marriage. 6 years of family dinners where Beverly held court and Zara cleared the plates. 6 years of being introduced as Tunde's wife in a tone that suggested this was a temporary arrangement. 6 years of watching her husband take credit for a life that she had helped build in ways nobody in his family ever bothered to ask about. The dismissal had been quiet at first. Almost polite in its precision. At family events, Zara was assigned to the kitchen. Not because she offered, but because Beverly arranged it before Zara arrived. By the time she walked through the door, her role had already been decided. She was the help. She served the food. She smiled and said nothing while Beverly's friends discussed their investments and their children and the promising future of Beverly's remarkable son. Nobody asked Zara about hers. Then the word started. Beverly had always been cutting. But somewhere around year 3 she stopped bothering to be subtle. At a family dinner, 40 guests, candlelight, everyone in their finest, Beverly set her fork down and looked at Zara with the calm of a woman who had been rehearsing. "You know what your problem is, Zara? You have never understood what this family is. The Osays build things. They contribute. They create. They leave something behind. And you," she paused, "you are simply here. You take up space. You sit at tables that my son built. You have never once brought anything real to this family. Not ambition. Not connections. Not even a child. Tunde deserves a real partner. What he has is a placeholder." Silence at the table. Tunde looked at his plate. Zara looked at Beverly steadily. She did not look away. She picked up her water glass, took a slow sip, and said, "Thank you for dinner, Beverly. The lamb is wonderful." Beverly blinked. That was not the response she had prepared for. And then came the Sunday that broke something. Beverly arrived with a guest. A woman named Simone, polished, early 40s, the kind of woman who wore money quietly. She had known Tunde in college. They had been close, Beverly made sure to mention, very close. Simone made partner last year. Beverly announced at the dining table Zara had chosen. in the house Zara had helped pay for. She travels internationally for work. She speaks 3 languages. She has 2 beautiful children from her first marriage. She would have given this family exactly the kind of legacy it deserves. She looked at Zara. But we work with what we have. Simone shifted in her seat. Even she knew it had gone too far. Zara refilled the water glasses and said nothing. But inside something shifted. Not broke. Not shattered. Decided. 6 years of patience had reached its natural end. That night after everyone left, Tunde found Zara in the kitchen. She doesn't mean it, he said. She means every word, Zara replied. And so do you. Tunde didn't answer. His silence was the loudest thing he had ever said to her. 3 weeks later, Walter Malik died. He had been sick for 8 months. Zara had driven to see him every weekend. She had sat with him through the treatments, through the good days and the difficult ones, through the slow process of watching a strong man become a smaller version of himself. Tunde came twice. Both times he left within the hour. Walter died on a Tuesday morning. Zara was with him. She held his hand until it was still. She drove home. She was still in her coat when she found the suitcases on the front steps. 3 of them, packed by Tunde's cousins while she was sitting with her dying father. Tunde stood in the foyer. Pressed suit. Clean expression. A man delivering a memo, not ending a marriage. The papers are on the kitchen counter. The attorney will reach out next week. You should be out before 6. Zara did not move. My father died this morning. I know. His burial is tomorrow. Zara. The papers are on the counter. She walked to the kitchen counter. Next to her father's reading glasses, the ones she had brought from his apartment because she didn't know where else to put them, was a white envelope. Thick. Formal. The kind of envelope that ends things. Tunde had chosen this moment. Not the week before her father got sick. Not the month before, when there would have been time and space. He had chosen the morning clothes and the wet eyes and the chair that would be empty at breakfast. Because Tunde understood something about power. The best time to take everything from someone is when they are already holding grief in both hands. When they have nothing left to fight with. Or so he thought. Zara picked up the envelope. She held it carefully. She looked at Tunde one last time. You should document this moment, she said quietly. Because one day when you have to explain what you did, and you will have to explain it, you will want to remember that you did it in a pressed suit while I was wearing black. Something flickered in his eyes. Gone in a second. 6 o'clock, he said. Make sure you're out. He walked inside. The door closed. Zara stood on the front steps in the rain with 3 suitcases and a white envelope and her father's reading glasses. And she smiled. Not a happy smile. Not yet. The smile of a woman who has just realized that the thing she has been dreading has finally arrived, and that she is more ready for it than she knew. Here is what nobody in Tunde's world knew. Walter Malik had not raised his daughter empty-handed. The quiet man in the worn work boots who drove an old truck and ate at diners had spent 30 years building something. Not loudly. Not for applause. The way people build things that are meant to last. Carefully, thoroughly, with attention to the quality of the foundation. Malik Properties held 47 commercial properties across Metro Atlanta and 2 investment partnerships in Charlotte. Walter had founded it in 1989 with $400 and a handshake. He had grown it without announcing it because he had learned early that the moment you tell people what you have, they begin to calculate what they can take. 6 months before he died, Walter called his attorney, a careful man named Gerald Whitmore who had been his counsel for 19 years, and made very specific arrangements. Everything to Zara. Every deed. Every certificate. Every share. Held in a company called Malik Holdings LLC, with Zara as sole principal. She didn't know yet. He had wanted to tell her himself. But the morning after the funeral, Gerald Whitmore called. Mrs. Osei. Or, I have both names on file. How would you like me to address you? Malik, Zara said. Zara Malik. Ms. Malik. Your father left instructions. I think you should come in. The meeting lasted 2 hours and 40 minutes. Gerald brought 3 folders and a sealed envelope with Zara's name on it in her father's handwriting. When it was over, Zara sat very still for a long moment. Does Tunde know any of this? Your father was very careful. He never disclosed the portfolio to anyone outside this office. As far as anyone in your husband's network would know, Walter Malik was a property manager with modest means. His campaign headquarters. The lease. Expired 41 days ago. Yes. The new landlord will need to set terms. A pause. Your father was very specific about what should happen next. He wrote you a letter. 3 months ago. Zara recognized the handwriting on the envelope the moment she saw it. Those careful, deliberate letters. The handwriting from shopping lists and birthday cards, and the notes he used to leave in her school lunchbox until she was 12 and told him she was too old for notes. She had not been too old. She had just been embarrassed. She had kept every single one. She held the envelope for a long time before she opened it. It was 4 pages. He told her about the portfolio, what was in it, how it had grown, what each property meant. He apologized for not telling her sooner. He said he had been waiting for the right moment, and the cough decided there would be no more waiting. And at the end, in the last paragraph, in the careful, deliberate letters she had known since childhood, he wrote, "They called you the janitor's daughter, Zara. They said it like it was a small thing to be. They didn't know what I know, that the people who build the foundations are the only ones whose names should ever be on the door. I wore these boots so that one day you would never have to explain yourself to anyone. The ground you're standing on is yours. All of it. And it always was." Zara read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her coat pocket. Then she called Gerald Whitmore. "I want the campaign donor event Tunde is hosting next Friday. The one at Skyline Tower. Ms. Malik, Skyline Tower is your building. You own the entire 41 floors." Zara was quiet for a moment. "I know," she said. "That's why I want it there. Let him host his event. Let him stand in that room in front of every donor, every ally, every person who ever believed his story. And then let them all find out at the same time." Gerald removed his glasses. "You want to do this publicly. He evicted me in front of his cousins while I was wearing mourning clothes," Zara said. "I think public is appropriate." Tunde Ose's campaign donor reception was the social event of his political season. 150 guests. The 41st floor of Skyline Tower, a venue his campaign manager Priscilla had secured through a building management contact, the kind of sleek glass and city view room that told donors their money was going somewhere serious. Tunde had been particularly pleased with the choice. It looked expensive. It looked like power. It looked like a man who was going somewhere. He had no idea whose name was on the deed. Guests arrived at 7. Business owners, political allies, journalists from 2 local outlets covering the campaign, the Henderson Group, Baxter Properties, every name that mattered in Tunde's carefully constructed world, assembled in one room on the 41st floor of a building that belonged to the woman he had put out of their home with 3 suitcases on the day she buried her father. Beverly was there, front row, champagne in hand, the proud mother of a rising star. Tunde worked the room. Handshakes, laughter, the performance of confidence he had spent years perfecting. He was 3 weeks from the primary. The momentum felt right. The room felt right. At 8 o'clock, he took the microphone. "Thank you all for being here. You are the people who make this city work. You are the reason this campaign means something. And tonight, I want to talk about foundations, about what we are building and why it lasts." He smiled. The room smiled back. And then the elevator doors opened. Zara walked in wearing a charcoal suit, her father's brooch at her lapel, with Gerald Whitmore and 2 attorneys behind her. She did not hurry. She walked the way her father had always walked, like someone who had nowhere to be and all the time in the world. She did not look at Tunde. She walked directly to the building manager's station near the entrance, picked up the room microphone that had been arranged to be available, and turned to face 150 people. Tunde's voice stopped mid-sentence. The room turned. "Good evening," Zara said. "My name is Zara Malik. Some of you know me as Tunde's wife. Some of you know me as the janitor's daughter. I'd like to introduce myself properly." Nobody moved. "The building you are standing in belongs to me. Skyline Tower is a Malik Holdings property. My father, Walter Malik, built this. He built 46 other properties across Atlanta as well. He built them quietly, without press releases or campaign events, in the same work boots he wore for 12 years. Beverly's champagne glass stopped halfway to her mouth. 3 weeks ago, my husband handed me divorce papers on the day I buried my father. He packed my suitcases while I was sitting with Walter in the hospital. He chose that moment, the most broken moment of my life, because he believed I had nothing and no one and nothing to fight with." The room was completely silent. 150 people holding very still. He was wrong. Gerald stepped forward and opened the first folder. "Malik Holdings currently holds title to 47 commercial properties in the greater Atlanta metro area," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the room. Your campaign headquarters sits on Malek land. The lease expired 41 days ago. Your fundraising venue on Peachtree is also Malek land. That lease terminated last week. Two of your largest donors, the Henderson Group and Baxter Properties, hold commercial tenancies with Malek Holdings that are currently under review. The Henderson Group representative looked at Baxter Properties. Baxter Properties looked at the floor. Priscilla, standing near the back of the room, closed her eyes. Tunde found his voice. Or a version of it. Zara, you can't do this here. You evicted me in front of your cousins while I was wearing black, Zara said. Her voice was perfectly level. Not loud. Not angry. The calm of a woman who has been waiting a very long time for a very specific moment. I think here is appropriate. She turned back to the room. My father never told anyone what he had built. He said it was because the moment you tell people what you have, they begin to calculate what they can take. She paused. He was right. Tunde spent 6 years telling everyone I contributed nothing. He spent 6 years standing on my father's land, raising money in my father's buildings, building a career on a foundation he never once thought to look at. She looked at Beverly. Beverly, who had called her the janitor's daughter at every dinner, in every room, to every person who would listen. The janitor's daughter built this floor you're standing on. She built the parking structure where you held your last fundraiser. She built the headquarters where your campaign signs are printed. Zara's voice did not rise. It did not need to. And she built all of it before she ever met your son. Beverly set down her champagne glass. Carefully, like a woman who suddenly understood she was in someone else's house. Tunde took a step toward Zara. Gerald raised one hand and said nothing. Tunde stopped. The Henderson Group representative was already on his phone, stepping toward the elevator. Baxter Properties followed. Around the room, in ones and twos, the careful calculation of men who invest in futures was happening in real time. And the calculation was not going Tunde's way. I'm not here to destroy anyone, Zara said to the room, to no one in particular. I'm here because my father left me something, and I intend to use it properly. This building will remain a Malek property. The Community Resource Center opening on the ground floor next month will carry his name. Everything else will be evaluated on its merits. She looked at Tunde one final time. The divorce papers you left on the counter. I signed them. You'll have them by morning. I'm keeping everything, because everything was always mine. She walked to the elevator. The doors opened. She stepped in. She did not look back. The room stood in silence for a long moment after the doors closed. 150 people in an expensive room on the 41st floor of a building that had just changed hands in front of all of them. Beverly picked up her bag and walked out without speaking to anyone. Tunde stood at the microphone with nothing left to say. Tunde's political career did not end in one dramatic moment. It ended the way most things end, slowly at first, then all at once. His donors needed stability. Without the headquarters, without the fundraising venue, without the confidence of men who read financial signals like weather, the campaign stalled. He came in third in the primary. He contested the result. He lost the contest. The house in Buckhead, the house where he had packed Zara's suitcases on the day she buried her father, where he had handed her a white envelope next to her dead father's reading glasses, turned out to have a mortgage managed in the creative way that men who are good at looking wealthy tend to manage things. When the creativity ran out the bank was not sentimental. Last confirmed sighting, Tunde Consulting. That word, when it follows a foreclosure and a failed campaign, is doing very heavy lifting. Beverly relocated to stay with a cousin in Charlotte. Nobody from the old social circle called to check in. The women who had laughed at Zara's plain clothes and quiet manner at those family dinners found themselves, one by one, on the wrong side of a story that everyone in Atlanta had now heard. Nobody wanted the association. They had called her the janitor's daughter. It turned out the janitor owned the ground they were standing on. That particular irony had a way of following people. 6 months after the Skyline Tower meeting, Zara converted Tunde's former campaign headquarters into something else entirely. The building was a 3-floor commercial property in Midtown. Not the largest in the portfolio. But her father had always said it was his favorite. Good light, he said. The kind of light that makes people feel like they can think clearly. She turned the ground floor into a free legal aid clinic. For workers with employment disputes. For people who had always been told their contracts didn't matter. For people who had never been able to afford an attorney. The second floor became a small business development hub for women who had the talent but not the connections, who had the vision but not the table. And in the lobby, at eye level, in a case of thick glass with a single light above it, she placed her father's work boots. The ones he had worn for 12 years. Worn at the heel, soft with use, the leather creased in the shapes of all the ground he had walked on. Not as a monument, as an explanation. Beside them, on a small card, was the last line from his letter. On the day the center opened, an older woman, maybe 60, the kind of woman who has seen things, stood in front of the display case for a long time. Then she turned to Zara. Whose father was this? Mine. He built all of this. He built everything. The woman nodded slowly. The way people nod when something confirms what they already believed about the world, but needed to hear said out loud. She walked into the legal aid clinic and signed up for a consultation. Zara watched her go. She was wearing the brooch her father had given her at graduation. Hammered gold, shaped like a bird with spread wings, the one that had belonged to her grandmother and her mother before her. He had given it to her with a note. This bird already knows how to fly. It was just waiting for you. She understood now what he had always understood. What he had been trying to tell her since she was old enough to listen. That the quietest people are often the ones who have been building the longest. That the foundations laid in silence, built without announcement, without applause, without anyone watching, are the ones that hold when everything else gives way. If this story moved you, if you believe that what you do in the dark always finds the light, subscribe to her drama tales and turn on your notifications. Because on this channel, the quiet ones always win in the end. And every story here is proof that your value was never theirs to decide. We will see you next time.